Many experiments have been conducted in order to understand what's going on in people's heads, and sometimes in order to see if they can brainwash them. From trying to train a chimp to act more human-like, to seeing why people tend to follow the group, here are psychological experiments that prove we're all crazy.
Hey guys, this is American Eye, bringing you another great video.
Number 10. The Monster Study. Some of the worst experiments tend to happen behind closed doors. In this case, the test subjects didn't even know they were part of a scientific study. The study took place at the University of Iowa, where they conducted speech experiments on orphan children. 22 orphan children were brought here with normal speech. Half of them were given good feedback on the way they talked, and the other half were kind of belittled for their imperfections. The ones who were criticized in some cases had absolutely no problem speaking at all. They were told that someday they'll grow out of it. At some points, the study got quite harsh, and a few were told that they should never speak at all. The children who had received negative feedback were psychologically traumatized and would refuse to read in front of the class. Others became social outcasts and wouldn't even socialize. In August 2007, 6 of the children were given a total of $925,000 in reparations. Number 9. Gua the Chimp. In order to see how similar chimps are to the human population, one chimpanzee by the name of Gua was raised as if she were a human. Work on this project took place in the 1930s, and the own researcher's son acted as if the chimpanzees was his own twin brother. They were seen playing around together quite often at a very young age. The experiment was going quite well at first, and the chimpanzee began picking up on human qualities such as walking around on 2 feet and even learning how to use a spoon. Chimpanzees' brains develop slightly quicker than human infants do, and researchers began to notice this experiment was going wrong. Instead of the chimp becoming more human-like, his son became more chimp-like. The research ended when the child wouldn't speak English and was developing ape-like noises instead. Number 8. Little Albert. Learning how the details of psychological responses certainly isn't always easy. Psychology crossed over the boundary of what was ethically acceptable. A man named John Watson in the 1920s experimented with an orphan in order to show how fear can be a conditioned response. A white lab mouse was placed near this child. He originally displayed no fear and found that playing with the mouse was comforting. He introduced the mouse to Albert several times, but eventually there was a twist. Each time Albert saw the mouse, he would make a frightening noise with a hammer, striking a steel bar. After doing this dozens of times, the child began to cry uncontrollably when he saw the mouse. However, this developed a much more severe disorder in his later years. Anything that was fluffy, white, or had a tail caused this kid to have severe discomfort or panic attacks. Number 7. Operation MKULTRA. This psychology project had one goal in mind: find a way to control people with psychoactive substances. Known as MKUltra, the CIA was experimenting with mind-altering drugs that they hoped would control people's minds. The main drug they experimented with was, of course, LSD, which would cause mind-blowing hallucinations. Other things they experimented with during this project included hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, sexual abuse, and/or psychological torture. They needed some ways to extract information from people, especially captured spies. Some even believe that these techniques have been used in order to assassinate our own presidents. One operation of MKUltra was known as Midnight Climax, where the government would test LSD on unwilling participants in San Francisco. Once they were drugged, they then tested interrogation techniques. Sometimes the truth can be stranger than fiction, and we recommend you look into this one for yourself. Don't forget the CIA holds archives of this project on their public website, free to explore. Number 6. Respect my authority. Also known as the Milgram experiment, this one proves how the people can become a part of the sheeple. Humans are trained at a young age to respect people's authority, like your teachers or policemen. But what happens when that authority goes too far? This psychological experiment starts off with a learner and a teacher. The learner will be asked a question, and if they answered it incorrectly, the teacher would have to administer the shock. The teacher would increase the voltage for the wrong answer, and the learner was really an actor pretending to be in pain. The conductor of the experiment acted as though he was the authority figure wearing a white coat, telling the teacher that everything was okay. The learner would beg the teacher to stop shocking him, but the authority figure told him that it was okay. The learner would beg the teacher to stop shocking him, but the authority figure told him that it was okay, and normally they complied with the orders. This proved that the average person was capable of going beyond their comfort levels when obeying unjust commands, such as this scenario. Number 5. Stanford Prison Experiment. This crazy psychological experiment is known for getting a little bit out of control. This happened when a psychology professor from Stanford created a fake prison environment funded by the US Navy and Marine Corps. A group of students were paid to act as prison guards, and the other half were paid to act as prisoners. At first, no one took the experiment too seriously, but that didn't last for too long. The students who were paid to act as guards began to get abusive and even forced someone to clean the toilet with their bare hands. The prisoners began to accept their life as a prisoner and obeyed ridiculous orders. They gave them numbers and took away their names. It wasn't too long until the prisoners wanted out. But the prison guards seemed to really like having just a little bit of power that they normally wouldn't have. This study showed how victims of abuse have trouble for saying how they truly feel. The professors called off the experiment once they realized they created complete monsters out of normal students. Number 4. The Asch Conformity Experiments. The judgment of your peers can truly have a huge impact on the decisions you make, even if those decisions are clearly wrong. In 1951, Solomon Asch conducted a conformity experiment. The group consisted of 8 male college students. All except one were actors. Each subject was given 2 cards like you see in this image. The students had to pick which line most closely resembled the length of the card that only had 1 line. As you can tell, the answer is clearly C. Did we fool you there? Did you question American Eye's authority? Because the answer is actually A. The student was then asked out loud in front of the other students which line was closest. All the others involved in the experiment answered the question incorrectly, and the test subject was told to choose last. Everyone else was clearly wrong, but the test subject still chose the wrong answer 38% of the time because he chose their response. After the test was completed, the test subject was interviewed, and most of the time, they simply stated that they were just going along with the crowd. Many began to doubt themselves to the point where they didn't feel like objecting to the majority. Number 3. Bystander Effect. One strange psychological effect that many researchers have noticed is the bystander effect. This is when something horrific has happened to someone and there are clearly plenty of witnesses. The only problem is that everyone expects the other witnesses to report what happened to the victim. So it never gets reported. This is perceived as a diffusion of responsibility and a delusion that others will step in and help out. It turns out onlookers are more likely to call the police if there are fewer eyewitnesses. It's a pretty crazy effect, and there have been many shocking experiments done to prove this. Whether it's people completely passed out on a busy sidewalk, it can surprisingly take 20 minutes to get help out. Can't people just take 1 minute of their busy day to ask someone if they need to get help? Some people just don't have the time and don't want to get involved. Or they just don't want to take action if no one else does. It was shown during experiments that if one person stops to help and talk to them, others will join. Many variables to this experiment have shown a lot of this is situational too. A person in a fancy suit is more likely to get help than someone who seems homeless. Number 2. Brown eyes versus blue eyes. Just to show how easy it is to discriminate against each other, in the late 1960s, a teacher from Iowa came up with this crazy experiment. In modern times, this wouldn't be deemed as ethical, you could say, but this type of thing went on back then. The town was primarily white, and one way to segregate the kids was by eye color. So the brown-eyed kids were given special treatment. They were given extra recess, a second helping of food at lunch, and could sit wherever they wanted, while the blue-eyed kids wouldn't get the same treatment. They were told that melanin levels were linked to intelligence, and all brown-eyed kids felt as though they were superior. It didn't take too long for the kids to start being cruel to one another and openly mock the blue-eyed kids for being dumb. It began affecting the blue-eyed kids' performances at school too. They began to make simple mistakes with easy multiplication problems. The teacher then told the brown-eyed kids that she had made a mistake, and it was actually the blue-eyed kids who were superior. Now the tides have changed. The brown kids feel like they're idiots, and the blue-eyed kids were on top of the world. In any case, some parents were completely outraged that their teacher would conduct such an experiment in their classroom. And number 1, 10% of text messages. Hey, I'm running late, got caught in traffic. Yeah, right, all lies. Cornell conducted an honesty study and found out that 1 in every 10 text messages are just complete and total lies. Some of those were just small fibs or excuses, but in general, lying via text message was way easier. Some are just white lies to seem more polite, like saying they have a cold, when in reality, all they really feel like doing is Netflix and chilling. We often rely on text messaging to let someone know if we're available or not, and in modern times, it can be as easy as clicking an away signal. Cornell is beginning to believe that lying is what people have to do in order to retain some privacy, because everyone's life is so out there because of so much social media. Cornell is getting pretty deep into this research and even believes that white lies might vary depending on someone's culture.